I can't.
Oh, I think you can. And you will.
Please, stop laughing at her. The words cut through the opulent air of the Harrington ballroom, trembling yet firm, spoken by Naomi Ellis as her hands hovered just above the grand Steinway keys. The guests, all dressed in tuxedos and glittering gowns, froze. For a moment the room was silent except for the faint clinking of champagne glasses. At the center of it all stood Adrien Harrington, tall and pristine in his midnight black suit, a mocking half-smile tugging at his lips. Naomi's voice had cracked under the weight of humiliation, but her eyes burned with something more dangerous. Resolve. She hadn't meant to speak, hadn't meant to let her private shame break into words. Yet here she was, the maid who had been ordered to play for fun before the aristocracy of Manhattan, suddenly standing at the edge of rebellion. And it all began hours earlier. The Harrington estate gleamed in the late afternoon sun, its stone walls casting long shadows across the sprawling lawn. Inside, chandeliers rained light onto polished marble floors where servants moved quickly and quietly, preparing for yet another of Adrien's dinner parties. Naomi Ellis moved among them, mop in hand, her gray uniform clinging slightly from the summer humidity. Her dark brown skin glistened faintly under the light, and the scarf covering her coiled hair slipped loose as she bent to scrub a streak near the grand staircase. She was careful, precise, but her mind was elsewhere. On music she hadn't touched in years. Notes she once dreamed of playing flickered like ghosts in her thoughts. Adrien Harrington swept into the foyer like he owned the very air. At 31, his presence was magnetic. Tall, broad-shouldered, jaw sculpted as if by an artist. Ocean blue eyes cool and sharp. His black suit fit like it had been stitched directly onto him. Yet beneath the flawless exterior was a restlessness, a man bored by everything he already owned. He noticed Naomi as he passed, her posture hunched, her movements deliberate. His eyes lingered for a fraction of a second, not in admiration, but curiosity, like someone noticing a painting hung in the wrong place. By nightfall, the mansion had transformed into a spectacle of power. Cars with tinted windows lined the driveway, and the ballroom filled with Manhattan's elite. Laughter bounced off the walls, champagne flowed, and a jazz trio played softly near the corner. But Adrien, restless as always, soon grew tired of the background music. He wanted amusement. It was then his gaze fell upon Naomi, who was quietly dusting near the piano. "Naomi," he called, his voice slicing through the chatter. The room stilled, heads turning. Naomi froze, her feather duster trembling in her hand. "Yes, sir," she answered softly, eyes lowered. Adrien's smirk widened. "Why don't you play us something, on the piano, for fun?" A ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. The idea was absurd, deliciously entertaining for those who thrived on hierarchy. Naomi's cheeks flushed hot, her heart hammered as dozens of eyes turned toward her. I don't," she began, but Adrien cut her off with a teasing lilt. "Oh, come on, don't be shy, it'll be a good show." The guests chuckled, some whispering behind jeweled hands. Naomi's stomach twisted, but she saw no way out. Refusing Adrien in front of his guests would only bring more humiliation. With stiff legs, she walked toward the piano, each step echoing louder than the last. The Steinway stood like a beast before her, its lacquered black surface reflecting her face. Small, uncertain, tired. She sat slowly, her back straightening, as if her body remembered an old discipline. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. And then, in the silence of 100 breaths held, Naomi pressed, set her fingers down. At first, a gentle melody, tentative, like testing the water. But then, something shifted. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The music rose, flowing swift and alive, no sheet in front of her, only instinct, pain, and memory guiding her. Each note shimmered through the room like glass breaking in slow motion. The laughter stopped. Conversations died. The clinking of glasses fell away. Guests stared, wide-eyed, as the maid they had dismissed revealed a storm of brilliance at the keys. Adrien, for once, had no words. Naomi's heart pounded, but her hands no longer trembled. She was no longer Naomi the maid. She was Naomi the musician, the girl who had once dreamed of Juilliard, the girl who used to sneak into church basements to practice on battered pianos, The girl who had buried her dream when her mother got sick and bills devoured every possibility. When the final note lingered in the air, the silence was thick, reverent. Naomi looked up, her chest rising and falling, only to find dozens of eyes locked on her in stunned disbelief. And then, Adrien clapped. Slowly at first, a smirk twisting his lips again. "Well," he drawled, breaking the spell. "Looks like we've discovered hidden talent among the help." Laughter returned, brittle but present. Guests chuckled, trying to match Adrien's tone. Naomi's throat tightened. Her gift, her soul laid bare, dismissed as nothing more than a party trick. But in the corner, an old man with silver hair and sharp eyes, a guest most ignored, leaned forward, studying her with intent. His lips curved in something faintly resembling a smile. Naomi, cheeks burning, rose from the piano. She bowed her head and whispered, "Please, stop laughing at her." It was the first time she had spoken back. The room stiffened. Adrien's eyes narrowed, though his smile remained. Naomi clutched her hands together, trembling, knowing she had just crossed a dangerous line. And in that charged silence, the true story began. The laughter faltered, leaving behind a brittle hush that spread across the ballroom. Naomi's words, quiet, almost fragile, still seemed to hang in the air like smoke. She realized too late what she had done. Speaking out of turn in front of Adrien's guests was an act of defiance. Adrien Harrington's ocean-blue eyes fixed on her, the corners crinkling in a smile that did not reach his gaze. He leaned back against the piano, his glass of whiskey balanced casually in hand. "Strong words, Naomi," he said lightly, though the weight in his tone sent a chill through her. "Didn't know you had a voice to match those hands." The guests tittered nervously, their laughter no longer free but forced, searching Adrien's face for permission to continue. Naomi's body went rigid. Her palms were slick, her throat dry. She wanted to sink into the floor, to vanish back into the shadows where she belonged. But Adrien didn't let her retreat. He placed his glass down on the polished piano, the soft clink sharp as a knife. "Play another," he commanded. "Something harder. Show us it wasn't just luck." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Naomi's chest tightened. She knew he wasn't asking. He was testing her, cornering her. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, a voice called from the crowd. "She doesn't have to prove herself to you, Harrington." It was the old man from the corner. Victor Langford, 67, a retired music patron whose wealth was quieter, less ostentatious than Adrien's, but whose influence stretched across every conservatory in New York. His silver hair gleamed under the chandeliers, his piercing gray eyes fixed on Adrien, not Naomi. The crowd shifted, curious, sensing a duel between giants. Adrien chuckled, the sound sharp. "Victor, my friend, don't be dramatic. We're just having a little fun." Victor's gaze sharpened. Fun at whose expense? Naomi's stomach flipped. She had never seen anyone act to Adrien that way. Her employer looked irritated, though his smirk didn't falter. His pride was a fragile, gleaming thing, and someone had just touched it. "Naomi," Adrien said, ignoring Victor now, his voice silk-edged with steel. "Sit. Play again. That wasn't a request." Her knees wobbled. She could feel every eye boring into her, waiting. To refuse would mean punishment, dismissal, maybe worse. But to comply would mean letting him turn her into a puppet, a spectacle for their amusement. Her hands trembled at her sides. She wanted to run. Instead, she looked at Adrien, really looked. He stood with casual arrogance, jaw sharp, shoulders loose, every line of his body screaming control. His blue eyes glittered with the thrill of dominance. This wasn't about music, it was about power. Her breath came shallow, quick, and then, against her will, she lowered herself back onto the piano bench. The keys stretched before her, white and black like a battlefield. Her fingers hovered above them, but this time the music didn't come. Her mind was a storm, her throat tight with shame. The room buzzed faintly with whispers. Adrien's smile widened. "There we go," he murmured, almost to himself. Then Naomi pressed down, harsh, discordant notes that clashed instead of danced. Gasps broke out around the room. She didn't care. She wasn't giving them the beauty they wanted. Her music once fluid and alive, now sounded jagged, bitter, like shattered glass scattered across the floor. When she slammed her hands off the keys, the silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable. Naomi rose, her eyes glistening, her voice trembling but steady enough. "I'm not your toy, Mr. Harrington." The words pierced the ballroom like lightning. Adrien's smirk finally faltered, if only for a heartbeat. The crowd stirred, unease spreading. Some looked away, embarrassed by the cruelty they had just participated in. Others whispered with hungry delight at the spectacle of a servant daring to defy her master. Victor Langford, however, smiled faintly into his glass of wine. Adrien recovered quickly, clapping his hands once. "Bravo!" he said loudly, forcing laughter back into the air. "Our maid has spirit. How refreshing!" The crowd followed his lead, chuckling, though the sound rang hollow. Naomi felt her face burn. She wanted to disappear, to erase the memory of her outburst. She hurried from the piano, nearly colliding with a waiter before vanishing through a side door into the service corridor. Behind her, the party roared back to life, but it wasn't the same. Whispers swirled, questions hung heavy in the air. And in the quiet shadows of the service hall, Naomi pressed her back against the wall, her chest heaving, her hands shaking. She had survived the humiliation, but something inside her had cracked wide open. She had shown them her music. She had shown them her voice. And though Adrien had tried to twist it into shame, a spark had been lit. Unseen by her, Victor Langford's eyes followed her retreat. He had heard more than just a maid fumbling through defiance. He had heard Brill. Naomi's hands still shook as she scrubbed the silver trays in the kitchen, long after the guests had returned to their laughter. The muffled roar of voices and clinking glasses bled through the walls, but Naomi felt cut off from it all, as though she'd slipped into another world entirely. The warm water splashed her wrists, yet she couldn't wash away the sting of humiliation. Every note she had played still pulsed in her veins. The way the room had fallen silent, the way her music had filled the air. For a moment she had felt alive again, but then Adrien had snatched it away with a single cruel smirk. "Our maid has spirit." The words rang in her ears like chains. She pressed her forehead against the cool cabinet door, breathing hard. Why did I let myself touch those keys? The kitchen door swung open. Naomi straightened instantly, tray in hand, heart lurching. It wasn't Adrien, thank God, but Clara Martinez, 22, a fellow maid with dark hair pinned into a bun and wide, watchful eyes. Clara set down a stack of glasses and looked at Naomi with concern. "Naomi," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "What you did in there? I've never seen anything like it." Naomi shook her head quickly. Please, don't talk about it." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "You think they didn't notice? Half the guests couldn't take their eyes off you, and Mr. Langford. You know who he is, right?" Naomi frowned. "The old man?" Clara nodded eagerly. "He's not just rich, he sponsors musicians, like the real kind. Symphonies, conservatories, all of it. He kept watching you like you were, I don't know, like you were gold." Naomi's stomach twisted. Hope and fear tangled inside her. She shook her head again, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle even to her. "I'm a maid, Clara. That's all. Don't make it more than it is." Clara didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. It is more. Hours later, when the party finally dwindled, Naomi slipped outside to the servants' quarters. The cool night wrapped around her like a balm, the stars sharp against the Manhattan skyline. She leaned on the railing, staring out, trying to quiet her racing mind. That's when she heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Adrien Harrington emerged from the shadows of the terrace, his tuxedo jacket slung carelessly over one arm, his tie loosened. Even disheveled, he looked impossibly put together. His blue eyes gleamed in the dim light. Naomi stiffened. "Sir?" She lowered her gaze. He chuckled softly. "You surprise me, Naomi." Her throat tightened. She said nothing. "You sit in silence all day, polishing floors, dusting books, pretending to be invisible." He tilted his head, studying her. "And then, suddenly, you sit down at my piano and play like you've been hiding a secret." Naomi clenched her jaw. "I wasn't hiding anything. You asked me to play." Adrien's smirk deepened. "I didn't ask." I commanded, and you obeyed. Her stomach nodded, heat rising in her chest. You humiliated me. He arched a brow. Did I? Or did I give you an audience you never would have had otherwise? Naomi's eyes snapped up to meet his. The arrogance in his tone burned. He truly believed he had given her something, that her gift belonged to his stage. She forced her voice to stay even. Music isn't a trick. It isn't for your parties. Adrien studied her in silence for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, invading her space just enough to make her pulse quicken. Careful, Naomi, he murmured. You're forgetting your place. Her chest rose and fell sharply, anger sparking through the fear. Maybe I finally remembered it. His smirk faltered, just slightly, but it was enough. Naomi turned and walked away before he could see the tears burning at the corners of her eyes. The next morning, Naomi moved through her chores in a fog, each step heavier than the last. She avoided Adrien, avoided Clara's probing eyes, avoided even her own reflection, but avoidance was impossible. By late afternoon, as Naomi polished the banister in the main hall, she heard the front door open. Victor Langford entered, cane tapping lightly against the marble floor. His sharp gray eyes immediately found her. Miss Ellis, he greeted warmly. The use of her name, not Maid, startled her. She lowered her cloth, uncertain. Good evening, sir. Victor smiled faintly. Last night, you reminded me of something I had forgotten existed. Pure music. Untamed, unpretentious. You played as though the piano itself was alive. Naomi's breath caught. She shook her head, flustered. I only did what I had to. He leaned on his cane, studying her with quiet intensity. No, child. You did what you were born to. Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her that way. From the balcony above, Adrien's voice cut through like a blade. Victor? His tone was cordial, but cold. What a surprise! I didn't expect you back so soon. Victor didn't look up. His gaze stayed fixed on Naomi. We should talk, Naomi, he said gently. About your future. Naomi's heart slammed against her ribs. Above, Adrien's expression hardened. The week blurred into a haze of tension that clung to every corner of the Harrington estate. Naomi worked as she always did, polishing silver, scrubbing marble, dusting shelves that held books no one ever read. But the air had changed. Eyes followed her, whispers chased her down corridors. She caught fragments when she carried trays through the dining hall. The maid who played, Adrien's little discovery. Prodigy, they said, but surely just a parlor trick. Every murmur stabbed, each word reminding her that her gift had been reduced to entertainment gossip. And Adrien knew it. It happened on a Saturday evening. Naomi was summoned to the ballroom, her uniform freshly pressed, her hair scarfed neatly. The chandeliers glowed overhead, the grand piano gleamed like a predator waiting in the corner, and a crowd, unlike any Naomi had ever seen, filled the room. CEOs, ambassadors, critics, journalists with notebooks tucked discreetly under their arms, all gathered in Adrien's home. Naomi's stomach dropped. This wasn't a dinner party. It was a showcase. Adrien emerged at the top of the grand staircase, immaculate in his tailored navy suit. His smile was sharp, his voice smooth as silk. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his words echoing against the marble. Tonight you will witness something extraordinary, not in a concert hall, not on a stage, but here in my home, a hidden gem, discovered in the unlikeliest of places. His hand gestured toward Naomi like a magician unveiling a trick. Our maid, Naomi Ellis. A ripple of gasps and curious laughter spread through the crowd. Dozens of eyes turned to her. Naomi's face burned. She wanted to disappear. Adrien descended the stairs slowly, savoring the spectacle. He leaned in close as he passed her, his whisper sharp against her ear. Don't embarrass me. Naomi's heart thundered. She was trapped. If she refused, she would be ruined. If she complied, she would be his pawn. Victor Langford stood near the back, his cane in hand, his face solemn. His eyes met Naomi's, and she felt a flicker of courage. She walked to the piano. The crowd hushed. She sat, hands trembling above the keys. For a moment, silence stretched taut, her breath caught in her chest. And then, she began. The first notes were soft, hesitant, like a bird testing its wings. But then the music swelled, alive, fierce. Naomi poured everything into the keys, her childhood dreams, her mother's sacrifice, her humiliation, her defiance. The piano roared under her touch, filling the room with sound that was too vast to belong to a servant. The crowd leaned forward, enraptured. Some clutched their chests, others closed their eyes. For those minutes, Naomi's music owned them all. And Adrien felt it. From his place at the front, he watched as the narrative slipped from his control. Guests weren't looking at him, the host, the billionaire. They were staring at her. Their awe wasn't gratitude to him for discovering her. It was reverence for Naomi herself. His jaw clenched, his glass cracking faintly under his grip. When the final note faded, the silence was almost holy. Then, applause thundered, loud and unrestrained. People rose to their feet, clapping, shouting, "Bravo!" Naomi sat frozen, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She had played not for them, not for Adrien, but for herself. For the first time, she felt free. Victor's voice rose above the din. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just heard genius. Mark my words, this young woman belongs on the world's greatest stages." The crowd roared again, agreeing. Adrien stepped forward quickly, forcing his smile back into place. "Yes," he said loudly. "And remember, it was I who discovered her. Without me, she would still be scrubbing floors." The applause faltered, the room shifting uncomfortably. Victor's cane struck the floor, sharp as thunder. "No, Harrington," he said coldly. "You didn't discover her, you exploited her." The crowd gasped. Naomi's eyes widened. Adrien's face drained of color, though his smile stayed frozen. Victor stepped forward, his voice carrying. "Greatness does not need permission from wealth. You humiliated her. You tried to own what was never yours, and yet she rose above you." The storm of applause echoed off the marble walls, but Adrien Harrington heard none of it as triumph. To him, each clap was a nail driven into his pride. Naomi's name was on every lip, not his. Faces that once turned to him for approval now shone with admiration for her. Naomi, still trembling, bowed her head slightly, her eyes damp with unshed tears. For a fleeting moment, she felt weightless. As if the years of silence, of swallowing humiliation, had cracked open into light. But even in the swell of her victory, she sensed danger. Adrien's ocean blue eyes fixed on her with something sharp, wounded, almost unhinged. The crowd pressed in around her after the performance. Women in gowns reached for her hands, praising her. Men in tuxedos asked where she had studied. Some begged to know when she would play again. Naomi stood among them, dizzy. She had never been surrounded by so many powerful people treating her as though she mattered. Victor Langford appeared at her side, steadying her trembling shoulder. "Breathe, child," he murmured. "This is only the beginning. The world is waiting for you." Her chest tightened with something between joy and terror. "But I don't belong here." Victor's eyes softened. "You belong wherever your music carries you. And it carries farther than you know." Before she could reply, Adrien's voice sliced through the air. "Ladies and gentlemen!" He strode forward, his smile taut, his glass raised high. "Let us toast Naomi Ellis. Proof that talent can be found in the most unexpected places. And let us remember, it is through my home, my generosity, that you all witness this gift tonight." The applause was polite, but muted. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. The contrast was stark. Naomi's authenticity against Adrien's grasping arrogance. One woman whispered too loudly, "He sounds desperate." Adrien's jaw twitched. He caught Naomi's gaze, and she saw it clearly. His mask cracking. Later, when the last of the guests had drifted out into their black cars, Naomi lingered near the piano, her hands grazing the polished wood as though saying goodbye to an old friend. Adrien entered, his steps sharp against the marble. His smile was gone. "You think you humiliated me tonight?" he asked quietly. Naomi's breath caught. "I didn't." "You did." His voice shook, not with weakness but with rage barely restrained. "In my house, in front of my people, you stole the room from me." Naomi's spine stiffened. "I didn't steal anything. I only gave them what you demanded I give." Adrien moved closer, his shadow long across the piano. Don't twist this. Without me, you're nothing. You'd still be scrubbing floors, forgotten. I made you. Her chest burned. She lifted her chin, tears threatening but voice steady. You didn't make me. You tried to bury me. And tonight proved I can rise without you. The words hung heavy, trembling with truth. Adrien's face cracked. For the first time, Naomi saw not arrogance, but desperation. The hollow center of a man, terrified of irrelevance. His blue eyes flickered, wet with something that looked dangerously close to grief. He turned sharply away, his voice breaking. Get out! Naomi flinched. Leave the piano, leave the room, leave me. She obeyed, her legs weak, her chest heavy, but as she stepped into the dark corridor she knew, something had shifted. Adrien Harrington, untouchable billionaire, had fractured before her eyes. In the days that followed, the ripple spread. Newspapers whispered of the maid who outshone the master. Society columns gossiped not about Adrien's party, but about Naomi's gift. Victor Langford reached out discreetly, arranging a private audition at a conservatory. Clara, wide-eyed with pride, squeezed Naomi's hand in the kitchen. You're not meant for these walls anymore, she whispered. Naomi wanted to believe it. Yet each time she passed Adrien in the hall, she felt his silence pressing down like a storm cloud. He no longer smirked or mocked. He said nothing at all. And that silence was somehow more dangerous than his words. The breaking point came one late evening. Naomi entered the ballroom, drawn to the piano like a moth. She pressed a tentative chord, soft in the empty room. Adrien was there, sitting in the shadows with a glass in hand. His tie was undone, his hair mussed, his eyes bloodshot. You can't stop, can you? He rasped. Naomi froze. You sit there, he continued, and the world bends to you. Do you know how that feels? To watch everything I built, every ounce of respect I commanded, crumble because of a maid with music in her veins? His voice cracked, raw and naked. He set the glass down with trembling hands. I don't know who I am without control. And tonight, you took it from me. Naomi's heart pounded. For the first time, Adrien wasn't mocking or commanding. He was unraveling. She swallowed hard, whispering, Maybe what you lost wasn't control. Maybe it was the mask you've been hiding behind. Adrien looked at her, his eyes weak. His voice broke completely. The next morning dawned gray, a light drizzle softening the horizon over the Harrington estate. Naomi moved quietly through her duties, but her mind churned with the memory of the night before. Adrien's voice, trembling and raw, echoed inside her. I don't know how to live without the mask. She had expected him to rage, to punish, to remind her of her place. Instead, he had broken open before her eyes, and though part of her still despised the humiliation he had inflicted, another part, the part that still heard music in silence, couldn't forget the vulnerability in his words. By noon, the storm came. News outlets had picked up the story. Headlines blazed across Manhattan society pages. Maid stuns with genius at Harrington Gala. Naomi Ellis, a star born from servitude. Billionaire Harrington overshadowed in his own ballroom. Clara smuggled a folded newspaper into the kitchen and pressed it into Naomi's hands. Naomi stared at her own name in print, her own face caught mid-performance in a photograph. Her chest swelled and ached at once. But not everyone was celebrating. In the main hall, Adrien Harrington's phone buzzed relentlessly. Associates, investors, colleagues, all with the same questions. Why didn't you tell us you had a prodigy in your house? Are you sponsoring her? Was this your plan all along? Adrien's jaw locked as he realized the truth. They weren't calling about him. They were calling about her. That evening, Victor Langford returned, cane tapping against marble as if he owned the ground he walked on. He requested to see Naomi. Adrien intercepted him in the foyer, his smile tight. Victor, you've been here a lot lately. I hope you're not trying to lure my staff away. Victor's eyes gleamed with quiet defiance. Your staff, Harrington? No. This young woman is no one's property. She has a gift the world. It deserves to hear. And I intend to help her. Adrien's mask cracked, his voice sharp. She works for me. This is my house, my stage, my Victor's cane struck the marble sharply, silencing him. That's your sickness, Adrien. Always mine, mine, mine. But you cannot own brilliance, and you cannot cage a spirit that refuses to kneel. Naomi, who had lingered at the edge of the corridor, stepped forward then. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. He's right, she said softly. Adrien turned to her, betrayal flashing in his eyes. Naomi. Her chest rose and fell. I am grateful for what I've learned here, but I will not let my music be your entertainment anymore. It's not yours to command. The words hit like thunder. For a moment the house itself seemed to shiver. 2 days later, Naomi stood in a conservatory hall, sunlight spilling across polished wood floors. Before her sat a panel of instructors and patrons, Victor among them. She played again. Not for survival, not for defiance, but for freedom. Her music carried the ache of years lost, the tenderness of her mother's voice, the fire of every humiliation survived. When the last note faded, silence swept the room. Then applause rose, fierce and genuine. Tears slipped down Naomi's cheeks as one of the instructors whispered, "Prodigy." Victor leaned toward her, his eyes kind. "Welcome home, child." Back at the estate, Adrien sat alone in his study, the newspaper headline spread before him. Naomi Ellis, the maid who became music. His reflection stared back from the glass of his untouched whiskey. His empire felt quieter now, emptier, as though Naomi had carried its soul away with her. He pressed his hands to his face, whispering hoarsely to no one, "I'm sorry." For the first time in years, his walls echoed not with power, not with parties, but with silence that demanded truth. Days later, Naomi returned once more, not in uniform, but in a simple white dress that gleamed against her skin. Adrien met her at the door, his posture tense. In his eyes haunted. He opened his mouth, but no charm, no arrogance came. Instead, his voice cracked. "I was wrong." His chest rose sharply, his throat tight. "I mocked you, humiliated you, tried to make you small because I couldn't stand how big you really are, and I—" His words broke, his eyes filling. He sank to one knee, his hand trembling against the marble floor. "Naomi, I'm sorry. Please, forgive me." The sight stole Naomi's breath. The billionaire who once lorded over her now knelt like a man stripped bare of everything but regret. Tears stung her eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing, her heart torn between rage and mercy. Then softly, she whispered, "I forgive you, but I will never belong to you." And though Adrien's tears fell, there was relief in them. Because forgiveness, even without possession, was more than he deserved. That night, Naomi walked out of the Harrington estate for the last time, her steps light, her spirit unchained. Ahead of her stretched the world, wide, uncertain, waiting. The stage lights glowed warm against Naomi's skin, casting her in gold. She stood at the grand piano in Carnegie Hall, the same hall she had once cleaned from the shadows years ago during a corporate event for the wealthy elite. Tonight, she was not invisible. Tonight, she was the center. The audience stretched endlessly, velvet seats filled with faces. Critics, musicians, strangers, and even those who had once mocked her. Somewhere in the crowd, Clara sat in the front row, cheeks glowing with pride, her hands clasped tight as if holding her breath. Beside her, Victor Langford leaned on his cane, his smile unshakable. The murmurs quieted. Naomi sat, smoothing her long satin gown, and placed her hands gently on the keys. She remembered the ballroom humiliation, the sting of laughter, Adrien's smug dare. Play something, just for fun. And she remembered, aired the silence that followed. The moment the world first realized who she truly was. Naomi exhaled. The hall hushed to stillness. Then, she began. The music rose, tender at first, each note a confession. She played her story, her mother's lullabies, the ache of lost years, the burn of humiliation, but also the triumph, the resilience, the radiant joy of discovering freedom. The sound swelled into waves, washing over the audience. Some leaned forward, enraptured. Others wept openly. This was not performance. This was testimony. In the third row, Adrien Harrington sat alone. He had slipped in quietly, no entourage, no spotlight. He wore no mask tonight, only the rawness of a man undone. His eyes glistened as he watched Naomi command the very world he had once tried to keep her from. The music stabbed him and soothed him all at once, every note a reminder of his cruelty, and every crescendo a lesson in humility. When she reached the final movement, Adrien bowed his head, tears falling freely, his body trembling with a truth too long denied. She was never his maid. She was a queen, and he had been blind. When the last note trembled into silence, a breathless hush clung to the hall. Then the audience erupted, applause thundering like rain on rooftops. People leapt to their feet, shouts of "Bravo" echoing through the chamber. Flowers showered the stage, bright petals at Naomi's feet. Naomi rose, tears shimmering in her eyes, and bowed. For once, she did not bow as a servant. She bowed as an artist, a woman reborn. Victor rose with difficulty, his cane tapping, but his voice rang proud. "The world has found its star." Clara cheered until her voice broke, her friend glowing in the spotlight she had always deserved. And in the shadows, Adrien clapped too, slow and trembling, his tears blurring the stage. He knew the applause was not for him, nor should it ever have been, yet he kept clapping, broken but sincere, his own redemption found in surrender. Backstage, Naomi stood before a mirror, her gown gleaming, her face flushed with joy. She touched the piano calluses on her fingers and smiled. Clara burst in, laughing and crying at once, throwing her arms around Naomi. "You did it, girl! You did it!" Victor entered slowly, his cane steady, his voice soft. "You've given the world more than music tonight. You've given it truth." Naomi's eyes shone. "I was so afraid they'd only see me as a maid who got lucky." Victor shook his head. "They saw you as you are, a genius who fought her way into the light." She nodded, her throat tight, her heart impossibly full. Later that night, Naomi stepped out into the cool New York air. The city pulsed with life, neon and headlights streaming like veins of light. For the first time in her life, she did not feel small in this city. She felt limitless. From across the street, Adrien stood watching. Their eyes met. He did not cross, did not call her name. He only pressed a hand to his chest, a silent gesture of apology and respect, then disappeared into the night. Naomi smiled faintly, not in anger, not in longing, but in peace. His story was no longer hers to carry. She turned her gaze upward, toward the endless sky. Somewhere beyond the stars, she imagined her mother smiling too, whispering the same words she had once sung in lullabies. "You were always meant for more." Naomi whispered back, "I'm free now, Mama." And she walked forward into her future, every step accompanied by the music only she could play. The maid was gone. The prodigy remained. And she carried with her not only music, but freedom. "Naomi, I don't know how to live without the mask." The words hung in the empty ballroom, a confession no one else would ever hear. And for the first time, Naomi saw not just her tormentor, but a man stripped bare by his own emptiness. The room erupted, not in applause this time, but in murmurs, in judgment, in the collective shifting of allegiance. For the first time in his gilded life, Adrien Harrington stood on the wrong side of a room full of power. Naomi, still trembling, rose from the piano bench, her voice broke but carried. "I am not his discovery. I am Naomi Ellis, and this is who I am." The crowd erupted once more, but this time, the cheers weren't for Adrien. They were for her. And Adrien, standing amidst the storm, felt his carefully built empire of control begin to crumble. That night, as Naomi lay awake in her small, windowless room, she realized the balance of the estate had shifted. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, and Adrien, for the first time, looked shaken. But with every glimpse of hope came danger. Naomi knew Adrien Harrington wouldn't let his control slip easily. And she was right. Because by the end of the week, Adrien would turn her gift into a weapon against her. Ions hidden under fear. And brilliance could not be ignored.